Welcome back, everyone, to Perspective 2025. I hope you enjoyed your long 15-minute break. I certainly enjoyed mine. Once again, stretching my back out because this chair I'm sat in is absolutely terrible. But that aside, let's move on to our next speaker, which is Georgie. Georgie, who identifies as she, her, is based in regional Queensland, is passionate about the importance of free and readily accessible peer programs in the community mental health sector. Driven by her own lived experience, Georgie enjoys working in genuine co-design and inclusive government spaces. With a background in social work, Georgie is committed to upholding principles of social justice, respect for persons, and professional integrity. She also has an interest in the intersection of climate change and social work, as well as eco-social work. Georgie enjoys connecting with others and spending time in nature to maintain her well-being. Welcome, Georgie.
Hi everyone, my name is Georgie and I'd firstly like to kick off by paying my respects to the traditional owners of the different lands we're all meeting from today. For myself, that's the Tarrabalung Bunda, Gurang, Bayili and Gurang peoples. I'd also like to acknowledge the individual and collective contributions of those with a lived and living experience of mental ill health and those who love and care for them. A big thank you also to the Finding North Network and Mental Illness Fellowship Australia for bringing us all together for this e-symposium. To help set the scene of my presentation, I thought I'd first share a little bit about myself. I'm a 30-something, first-generation Australian-born person living in regional Queensland. I've experienced periods of significant mental ill health through my life, as have my family members in previous generations. Cultural stigma and shame, added to societal stigma and shame, has been ever present. Lived experience, lived expertise, and peer-to-peer support groups have been a relatively new journey for me and one I've been on for the last 4 or so years. Like many of you, I'm sure, I've been so heartened to learn that I'm able to turn negative experiences into ones more purposeful by seeking to shed light on mental ill health by speaking openly about it and without shame. As a social worker, I'm also chuffed that it enriches my work as a Queensland State Manager for the peer-to-peer community mental health organisation, GROW. Today, I'm really happy to be speaking to the 2025 theme of amplifying lived experience perspectives in mental health and the sub-theme of the power of peers, exploring peer support in mental health recovery and advocacy. My aim is to share my lived experience story and how telling my truth at a peer-to-peer mental health support group helped me begin to overcome my own internalized stigma and shame. I'm hoping to make it as authentic, real, and personal as possible, rather than more of a professional or academic presentation. Today, I'm bringing my whole self, both personally and professionally, in the hope that my experience of mental health challenges can help to raise awareness and instill hope in others. I also hope that if it resonates for you and you haven't considered checking out a peer-to-peer support group before, that you just might. So, you might be wondering, who are GROW, what are their peer-to-peer support groups, and how do they work? So to help set the scene, it's probably helpful for me to explain a little bit of this. I often tell people that I came to GROW backwards, with inverted commas. Many of our staff members first found themselves attending a GROW group as a community member looking to work on their mental health recovery. They then fell in love with what they discovered and came to work for GROW that way. I, however, only first heard about GROW when I saw a job listed. It blew my mind that I'd been working in the Queensland not-for-profit sector for a few years and had never come across GROW. I like to believe in kismet though, and I choose to believe that life experiences led me here when it was meant to be. GROW came about back in the 1950s when a group of people were seeking mental health support in the community from others who were going through something similar. They stumbled upon an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting and thought, hey, there's something in this, but they weren't alcoholics. And from that, GROW groups were born. Our GROW groups are peer-to-peer mental health support groups in a nutshell. Whilst I wholeheartedly believe that there is a need and place for support groups that are informal and unstructured, say having a chat over a cuppa, this isn't what we do. Our weekly 2-hour working meetings are structured using something called a group method, which we use as our agenda, and based on a 12-step program of mutual help and personal growth. Our peer groups incorporate 4 key elements. The first is the establishment and maintenance of strong social relationships. The second is an opportunity to tell the story. The third is shared leadership, self-directed group management, and roles that support the continuation of the group. So in other words, it isn't facilitated by staff. Our members or growers have ownership over the group. And the fourth one is an environment of safety. Our groups draw on key elements of peer-to-peer program research, which support participant recovery, as reflected in the psychological recovery model. In other words, our groups include these 4 elements that peer group research shows to be the most effective in supporting mental health recovery. As you can see on the screen, these are 1, hope, optimism, a vision of a meaningful life. 2, social connectedness, secure relationships, mutuality of support. 3, active sense of self and positive identity and critical reflection. And 4, empowerment, self-efficacy, and taking responsibility. Crucially, and what makes us different to other peer-to-peer mental health support programs, is that our program is a 12-step program. I always liken it to AA, NA, GA, all the A's. If you think of an AA 12-step meeting, it's like that, but for mental health. My first impressions were that it was totally different to anything else I'd experienced, as I was totally new to 12-step programs. It was a steep learning curve for me. It had a whole new language to learn, but I very quickly saw and understood the value of peer-to-peer connections and support. There were no power imbalances that I'd previously experienced elsewhere. There were genuine connections and friendship, and there was a sense of understanding that felt really different and special. And that's because, as we know, people with a lived experience just get it in ways that can be difficult and, dare I say, impossible for people without it to understand. There was a real lack of judgment. It's been a pretty profound experience to understand the strength and empathy that my lived experience has given me, and the ways I can use it to support others, and in turn, how others use their lived experience to support me right back. So now that I've set the broader scene, let's jump into how a Grow group encouraged me to tell my truth and why it's been crucial in overcoming my shame and stigma. Grow's motto is truth, character, and friendship. If someone is struggling with life's problems, our peer-to-peer mental health support groups, or Go groups, offer a remedy. The remedy comes in the form of 3 principles: truth, character, and friendship. Today, I'll be focusing on the significant role that the principle of truth has had on my own mental health recovery. The Grow principle of truth explains that mental health is truth, the conformity of my mind with a reality. It comes from thinking, speaking, and living truly. We use something called the Blue Book during our Grow groups and in day-to-day life more broadly to help our recovery. To give a quick rundown of what this book is, our Blue Book is a rich collection of wisdom and writings that have been developed by our members for our members. It represents what members have found to work for them in their recovery, and has evolved over time since its 1957 inception from lived experience. It's co-designed in its truest form. The writings are the cornerstone of our Grow groups and help give us the tools for our mental health recovery and personal development. It's best described as a manual for improved mental health. The principle of truth is found throughout the Blue Book, and so on the path to my own mental health recovery and personal growth, it's been a challenge I've been frequently faced with. For example, at the beginning of every meeting, we're invited to commit to speaking the truth. Throughout our personal growth journey, we're encouraged to tell the untellable, not have any great concern about stigma while recovering, and reminded that nothing has a more healing effect on the mind than to hear and speak the truth on subjects of vital importance. Although this may sound easy enough to do for some, for me, someone who had never spoken 100% openly about my mental health challenges, with the exception of 2 people, my husband and my childhood best friend, it was terrifying, confronting, all the scary words. So here's my own experience in a bit of a storytelling form. There is a large aspect of my life that is invisible. It is an important part of my life experience and story, but you can't see it. It isn't a tangible thing that you can grab and hold onto or touch. I have always worked hard to keep it unseen and out of the light, away from people's eyes. Because of this, I've found that it hides and it waits. Since my preteen years, I have struggled with my mental health. I struggled whilst growing up with a parent who experienced suicidality, and then I went on to struggle with my own experiences of suicidality and bouts of debilitating depression and anxiety. I used unhelpful coping strategies, which only worsened my mental health. Growing up with added cultural stigma added to my shame. This is my untellable, that I am now able to tell. It is my truth. From a young age, I recall feeling different. I sensed I wasn't quite the same as my mates. An example of this is that when I was around 12 or so, my best friend and I were writing poems and then sharing them with each other the next day at school. One morning, we swapped our poems and sat down next to each other to read them. I read hers and I started panicking. My reason for the panic? My beautiful best friend's poem was about butterflies. Mine? It was about feeling like the walls were closing in on me. So that illustrates what I mean when I say I felt just a bit different. I can see the humour in it now, but at the time, it was terrifying. I went from 12 to a young adult, keeping this invisible thing in the dark, until I couldn't hide it anymore. I had what can only be described as a full-blown panic attack sitting in my car out the front of my workplace one morning, when it all became too much. And the same thing kept happening, on repeat, but in more severe ways and more frequently throughout my 20s and 30s. And then I came across Grow and started attending a Grow group. I realised something with time that the Grow program was teaching me. The more I spoke about my truth to the people closest to me, and not many, not everyone, just a select few people who I loved and trusted, I began to lose my sense of shame about my mental health struggles, and thus the easier doing life slowly became. So over the last few years, as I inch closer to 40 laps around the sun, I've begun letting this invisible thing see the light of day and not hide in the shadows. Ironically, by letting it become more visible, it's becoming easier to manage. Ironic, hey? And that's the thing about peer-to-peer Grow groups that I've been part of and had the pleasure to witness. It's encouraged me to share my story and talk about hard things with people that I trust. By doing this, I've found that more often than not, others are also hiding something that is invisible. I've come to realise that many others are struggling in similar ways. There's a part of the Blue Book that often comes to mind, and it says, "You don't really know anyone until you know the ordinary human being in them, the one struggling to relate to life as a whole." I really believe this, as many of us wear masks. I do want to ensure at this point, though, that I'm not oversimplifying the recovery process here, though. I should emphasise that it challenged me, and often the Grow group held me accountable each week, and I was expected to put in the work and contribute to my own recovery. I've used many resources during the various steps of recovery, such as spiritual ones, personal ones, and professional guidance. And Grow has encouraged me to do that. So attending a Grow group noted in the Blue Book as friendly help is just one of the things I've done. I have a list of resources I use and actions I regularly take, daily, in fact, and have done for many years now. such as taking medication, having a regular GP, exercise is a non-negotiable, eating healthily, and steering clear of alcohol and drugs. However, by remaining committed to attending the peer-to-peer mental health support group and speaking my truth, my feelings of shame have undoubtedly begun to recede. It's how I've been able to hold my head above water and take a gulp of air at times when I felt I was drowning. It was, for me, a start. As many of us that attend grow groups or indeed any intentional peer-to-peer mental health support group have found, keeping parts of ourselves hidden and banished to the shadows doesn't help. Instead, we can accept our shadow and we slowly, hopefully, come to learn that breakdowns are another step in our own growth and often a bit of a blessing in disguise. This becomes our truth. It is how we come to begin accepting ourselves, finally. Thank you so much for spending this time with me today and for listening to a bit of my story. In the best way possible, I've found it challenging and scary with a capital S. So I really do appreciate you taking the time and care to listen to my story. I hope that it's helped you feel seen and hopefully less alone if that's a feeling that also often plagues you. A reminder that you're not alone. There are lots of us engaging in peer-to-peer support, ready and waiting to support you. You just need to take that first step in coming to join us. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Georgie. So we will bring Georgie out to answer some questions. Hi, Georgie. How are you?
Hello. Good. Thanks. How are you?
Good. How are you feeling after having that presented?
It's a strange thing to watch and hear yourself on screen, and
it is, isn't it?
It really is. And apologies that the audio wasn't quite right. The irony, Jess, I live regionally in Queensland, as I mentioned in my presentation, and my internet is really hit and miss. So I actually thought that by pre-recording, I'd hopefully overcome tech issues. So apologies that it recorded a little bit quietly, it seems.
That's okay. The minute I started talking, I probably turned everyone deaf, so it's all right. Don't worry about it. Look, I really resonated with your story, and I really want to appreciate, let you know that I appreciate what you shared and your vulnerability in everything that you've been through. And hope not the blue book is not something I've heard of. I've certainly heard of NA and AA and GA and all those kind of big books and things like that, but I was not aware that there was something that reflected mental health. And so that's been a learn for me, and hopefully been a learn for a lot of other people in you know, who are in the audience today. Before we jump to the questions, I just had a quick question. Is the someone's actually already asked it. So can anybody access the Grow group? Like, is there a Grow group around Australia, or is it only specific to a certain area?
Yeah, thanks, Jess. Good question. And yeah, I'm glad that today's, helped spread the word a little bit. We're definitely, a little organisation in the scheme of some of the bigger not-for-profits that exist. So that's amazing. Like, I'm glad I can help spread the word, because it is primarily through word of mouth that people hear about us. So that's awesome. And so, yes, we have groups that are face-to-face and online. So our online groups are called eGrow. So we always say to people, if there isn't a face-to-face group that's nearby, definitely check out our online groups, because anyone from anywhere is welcome at any of our eGrow groups. So hopefully, yeah, that's it. But between online or in person, there should be one that people can find works for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And you said you're in regional Queensland, is that right? Is that kind of where everything sits mainly? Is that kind of the...
No, not at all. So I'm in a bit of a fortunate position where, thanks to COVID, to be honest, I was fortunate enough to be brought on in more of a remote role. So our Grow head office lives in Queensland, in South Brisbane.
Yep.
And so we have branches in majority of the states and territories. I saw a comment from someone who mentioned that they were with us until, sadly, we lost our funding in WA, but that's hopefully we'll be having a presence again in WA soon, which is exciting. But yeah, so we're a national org, Jess, so people can find their closest branch and then have a look at what groups are nearby them.
Yeah, that's amazing. Another question that's come through is, are there any other things that helped you other than the grow group? So you talked about things like exercise. Like I remember someone saying to me once, just have a
Mm,
glass of water and go for a walk. And I just wanted to tell them to get ducked.
yeah.
And then one day I had a glass of water and went for a walk, and hey, it worked. And I felt a lot better.
Yeah.
So you talked about things like exercise and stuff like that, but is there anything else that stands out as something outside
Yeah.
of the group and outside of the book and outside of that information that's really helped you kind of find your way and find your path to be on the path of recovery?
Yeah, massively. Thanks, Jess. Yeah, it's funny. Hey, the simple things, they do make you want to punch people in the face when you're feeling like you can't even get out of bed. It just, yeah, that resonates with me.
And then it works. Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So you're like, oh, of course, it's so simple. Um, I think consistency. So in terms of consistency is in as many parts of my life as I can maintain, whether it's having my work hat on or my friend hat, my mum hat, whatever it is,
Yeah.
just really trying to be consistent. And some days that is not being able to do a whole lot, but even a little bit keeps that consistency, like a little bit more level. And so for me, I think that's been the biggest thing is trying to be just consistent as much as I can, even if that is a little bit, and being really, this sounds so obvious, but again, it's one of those things that's so hard when you're in it to just try and be kind to yourself. I feel like so many of us that struggle with our mental health are so empathetic, right? And because we know how bad things can be, we give a lot of kindness and grace to other people. And I think it's so common for us to not give ourselves that same grace. And
Yeah.
so that's been a really, I get shivers as I talk about it. It's just been a really big learning curve, I think, is to realize that actually I can give myself even just, like a touch of the kindness that I show others.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's probably a big one for me, Jess.
No, that's all right. That's great. Controversial question that's come in the group, and I can see where this is coming from. Of anyone who's ever been part of NA or AA, is
Yeah.
there a religious element to joining the group?
Yeah, good question. Really good question. Thank you. And I would actually, with hindsight, because I heard myself mention the word spiritual, and I actually wish that I'd elaborated. It's a note for myself for future, any future kind of presentations I do. So with Grow, and similarly, like you mentioned, Jess, with like AA, for example, there's that idea of a higher power. And so in Grow, the way we've kind of adopted it is that can be believing in anything bigger than yourself. So, for example, I'm not religious. And so for me, that's nature. So I know that when I'm out there looking at a massive old mountain, I feel really insignificant in the best way. And so that for me is a spiritual experience.
Mhm.
And so we as an organization are non denominational. And so, yeah, it's can be a little bit going to say a little bit messy. That's not the right word, but I think when people hear spiritual, you straight away think religion.
Yeah.
But it's really whatever you believe in, and so non-denominational. That was a long answer.
No, that's okay. I've known people who use their higher power as Oprah, so you know what I mean. Everybody's different, so yeah, so that's okay. What
Yeah.
would you just kind of like in a one-word answer, what would you say
Mm.
is the difference between Grow and other peer support groups?
Yeah, that's a good one. And that's been a really I think that's what's been a really big learning curve for me is it's the intentional peer-to-peer framework that we use. So the idea being that everything we do in Grow, and for those I saw some people in the chat that have been part of Grow, and hello to all of our growers and Kaz in particular. Um, but I think that oh, sorry, Jess, I just totally lost my train of thought. I got distracted thinking about Kaz. What was I just saying?
That's okay. So sort of just a bit of a one-word answer around what the difference is between Grow and other peer support groups. So if you
Thank
yeah,
you.
yeah.
Yes, the intentional peer-to-peer support, definitely. So everything we do is structured, and
Yeah.
so we know what's going to happen in a group, and then it hopefully leads to those outcomes that I was mentioning in my presentation. Yeah.
Yeah, amazing. One last question that I'll just fly through to you, and apologies, I won't be able to get through all the questions here, but is there one key learning from Grow that you think that could be applied elsewhere to bring about positive change in the mental health system?
Yeah, there is. So the first thing that comes to mind for me and something that's resonated a lot with Grow, it'll sound a little bit wordy, but we've got something that we say is the overall key to mental health.
Mhm.
and it says, so settle for disorder in the lesser things for sake of order in the bigger things, and therefore, sorry, again, I'm having a bit of a mental blank, but basically a long-winded way of just saying try and not get too caught up in the little day-to-day things and keep that bigger picture as your focus. And so I think that that's something that's really important for all of us just day-to-day that are struggling.
All right. Okay, we can fit in one more question, which is great because I've got one more left. Actually, it's just disappeared. Hang on 1 second. So is there any learning from grow positive change in the healthcare system? No, that's all right. It's disappeared altogether. So, here we go. So I love peer support. I'm not familiar with the 12-step structures. You generally wouldn't be if you're not part of the Alcohol Narcotics Anonymous area. Is there flexibility in the steps?
Yeah, good question. So I was new to it as well. So it's not, the way that we do it in Grow isn't that it's necessarily linear. Like you don't need to start at step 1 and work through to step 12. The idea is that you find a step that resonates with you. So for me, step 10 is about really kind of trying to connect with community. And so I was new to where I live. And so for me, I started at step 10 and made that my focus.
Yeah, okay. Excellent. That's great. Thank you so much for your time and for explaining your organisation. I'll be sure to look it up myself along with everybody else. And as I stated earlier, so all the resources, there's little resources tab at the bottom of Zoom that will have everyone's information in there. But for now, thank you so much for that.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for watching. Explore more Perspectives 2025 on Finding North Network's YouTube channel. Find out more by visiting findingnorthnetwork.com.au or email info@findingnorthnetwork.com.au.